Hey Jordan, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you, man. What I almost said welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
So it's the very first episode, and you're here. Super grateful to have you, and thanks for actually agreeing upon to getting on the show. It's the very first episode, and you're here. It's a dream come true, man.
Yeah, good to be here with you, man. Always good to talk to people in this remote world. We get less interaction than we ever have, and it's just nice to talk with folks like yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who might not know who you are, Jordan is the co-founder and COO at Talos, which is a business automation service. He's also the founder of Trend Up Media, which is a podcast production business. And he's also the host of Building Freedom Show, one of my favorites of all time. And he has been featured on Forbes, Entrepreneur, TEDx, and he has achieved so much at such a young age. Not only that, he's also super humble and kind person, and he has been really helpful to me for past few years. So thank you for that, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, a humble and kind person. I'm glad you think so. It is, it's always, I'm glad it seems that way. And what's important to note, though, I'll put an asterisk next to that, as we always should. We should always put an asterisk next to people's polite social exteriors. That's what everyone has, a polite social exterior. That's the mask you wear when you go out into the world. But you don't really know what someone is like until the heat is on, right? Until they're under pressure, under stress. And then you start to see their true colors because they forget that polite social mask that they're supposed to be wearing. So to be fair, you've never seen me without my polite social mask on. You haven't seen much of me in general, especially, live face to face like this. So I'm just putting an asterisk next to, humble and kind person. I would like to think so. But like any human being, I'm not always, just being
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. So take us to your early days where you were just starting out in your career. And did you always wanted to get into entrepreneurship? And how did you actually start?
Yeah, man, I really wanted to get into some sort of entrepreneurship. I don't know if that's even the word I was using at the time. What I was saying to myself in my head was I just knew I wanted to work for myself. I want to work for myself. Because I worked in a restaurant from 16 to 18. You've probably heard that story before. And I
Yeah.
got out of there. It was not bad by any means. I think everyone should work in a restaurant. It's a very stressful, high pressure environment that I do think all young people should experience. And you've got to, all the while in that high pressure and stressful environment, you've got to interface with people, right? You've got to talk with people and
Yeah.
serve their needs. It's really good life training. Maybe I should even go back for like a week or two just to just to test myself. I mean, I'd like to see how far I've come, or how far I've regressed. Maybe how pampered I've become over the past 8 years. That would be interesting to see. But anyway, yeah, I had that job and it was not bad at all. It was actually a fairly good experience. Had good people work, like good team members, good managers. It was all good. But I did get out of there and I said, yeah, never again. Never will I work for anyone ever again. And I did not. I kept that promise to myself all these years. It's been 7 years since I got out of there at age 18, when I kind of flamed out, burned out of that, of working for people. And from there, I just, yeah, like you said, it was something I knew I wanted to do. Again, wasn't calling it entrepreneurship, but I just wanted to work for myself and started figuring it out. I thought I wanted to be a personal trainer. I did that for a number of years. I got my certification and tried to find my own clients. Took a long time, took 3 months to get my first client. And I actually got two in 1 week. I trained them twice a week each for the next 2-3 years. And that was that. Somewhere in the middle of that, I started developing websites just like yourself. I was just freelancing doing that. How old are you?
I'm 19 right now.
Oh, dude, you're ahead of schedule. You're ahead of schedule, man. I probably started doing that. You started doing that at like literally 16, 17, right?
I was 17 when I got my first client. That was free,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first client.
Yeah, amazing. So again, to my point, you're ahead of schedule. I started doing that probably at 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see, oh, I can make $3,000 just like that, as opposed to doing $60 an hour personal training sessions, which would take me 50 sessions, 50 plus hours.
Right.
Not to mention the driving time, the talking afterwards time. So let's just say even 100 hours
Oh, so
to
that was
get that
in
same amount of
person.
money. That was in person, yeah.
Oh,
So, yeah, I would go to people's houses. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is way better. This is a way faster way to make money. So I started doing that. Wasn't really a serious business, didn't have any form of lead generation at all, just took what came to me. So would make some money here, make some money there, not make money for a while, whatever. Then I started podcast production, did that for a number of years, probably over 3 years. And then, I found myself at Talos, where I'm I really didn't look. I guess what I'm trying to say is, at all those previous ventures, if you want to call them adventures in my life, I had never eclipsed $10,000 a month. At Trend Up Media, there were 2 months back to back where I got to, a little bit over $9,000, which as a solopreneur without much of a team, I just pay a couple freelancers here and there. It's a decent amount of money, especially being in college. But
yeah.
I've always, I look at some of my successful friends because I like to hang out with people more successful than me, that are also my age but way more successful. And I've always just felt a little bit insecure. Like, man, like you can't even build a $10,000 a month business. Like that's the starting point. That's such an easy thing to achieve for all these other people, and it makes you insecure, maybe in a good way. You beat yourself up a little bit, but it spurs you onward. And now we're at a point where we've closed $51,000 of business in the past 11 days. So that gives
That's
you a little
awesome.
bit of an idea of how it's going. And finally, for the first time, enjoying what I do for the first time, right? Just in total flow, loving what I do for the first time, and also uh, reaching a level of success that I have not yet reached, where I kind of plateaued for a few years from 20 to 24. I really did not grow much, especially in terms of revenue. Personally, grew, yes, but that's my journey to this point.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Long
Let- let-
answer. I gave you
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, we're gonna break that down even deep later at the later part of the show. But let's just talk about podcasting, because the Growth Mindset University has been huge, and I'm sure that have been breakthrough point in your life as well. So let's just talk about it. How did you get into podcasting, and why did you actually choose to start a podcast?
Yeah, I always struggle to answer this question. I think I've answered this question many times over the years. I haven't answered this question in probably many times at all in the last 2 years, though. So you get a fresh answer here. Um, I don't know, man. I kind of remember. I remember being in the Entrepreneur Institute at FGCU, which it was a college I went to, Florida Gulf Coast University. They have a really nice um, entrepreneur building. Um, Now they have an even newer one. It was already nice before, and now it's just amazing. They have a great entrepreneurial program there, where you put together a pitch, you can get funding. It's really cool. But I remember being in the room there with someone I knew at the time, a friend I had at the time, and he was a really extroverted guy. And I just like approached him and I kind of said, like, do you want to do a podcast together? I don't know where that came from at all. I have no idea. And we started just talking about it. He was excited, I was excited, and I was a really introverted, shy guy, so I felt like I needed this help. So we actually did Growth Mindset University together for the first 20 episodes, I think.
Hmm.
And so that was the start. Why, I can't tell you, but that was that. And you know what it morphed into, obviously.
Yeah. But having a podcast is one thing, but making it so huge, making that a top ranking podcast, over all the platforms is something next level. So how did that happen? Was that intentional, or it just happened naturally?
I started playing the game. You start playing the clout, social credit, social capital game. You start getting a little intoxicated off of the clout, right? And you start with a little. Maybe you see you're introduced to Chartable, and you see, oh, I'm ranked 1,000 in this obscure category, and it's like you start to tell yourself some ego stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just it can snowball from there. And it did for me. And was it productive? Oh yeah, for sure. That's what drove the show to be what it eventually came to be. But for me, it just became a lot of ego stories. An ego pursuit is what it was. It's a pursuit of recognition and fame that I thought I deserved. So I became very invested in the rankings, in the people that I was talking to. Really would take just about in the early, I would say in 2019, I would take just about anyone who had a blue check mark on their Instagram profile, Twitter profile, whatever. I would showcase it prominently in the episode feature image. You've probably seen it, where it's like, on the bottom of the card, it says like, their at username and then, a verified
Yeah.
badge there. I was very high on that, and I'm like, man, I'm talking to these people. They got that, and I'm talking to these people, like super, super superficial stuff. I don't remember what your question was, but that's right.
My question was, how did Growth Mindset University grew so much? But
Oh, and
again,
was it intentional? I mean, yeah, it was.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted it to be huge. Yeah.
All right. So now that you have kind of observed that it was more of a need of recognition, would you do podcasting differently if you were starting from scratch now? Would you do a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
way?
Um, yeah, I would. I remember having this conversation with Grant Cardone. You can actually listen to it. It's like 15 to 20, 25 minutes in. Excuse me. Where he was talking about there's all these shitty podcasters out there that don't know how to have a conversation. They're just like looking at their pre-planned notes and questions, and they don't know how to actually respond to what the guest is saying. And he's literally grandstanding talking about that, and I'm just sitting there like, oh yeah. Like nodding my head, kind of feeling like, oh snap, like that's me a lot of the time. I'm just I don't know that I'm really having these authentic conversations. I'm just kind of on a stage. It's just very contrived. Yeah, I would do it differently. I would do it more authentically. Everyone tries to do it the Joe Rogan way. Oh, I want to make, it'd be like the next Joe Rogan. And everyone tries to do that. But I would, of course, I would take some inspiration out of his book, not try to be the next Joe Rogan, but just try and have more real, authentic conversations, whatever that means. I don't know. I mean, right now I'm very much using the podcast as an outlet. Every now and then, maybe a couple times a year, I'll post something on there. Like, hey, look, I could post this interview on there. The option's there because I have the podcast.
Yeah.
It's out there. I can use it as an outlet when I want. Maybe I have something to talk about. Like I thought about something last week. Oh, maybe I should record a podcast on that. And I might a week or a month or 3 months down the line. So yeah.
Yeah, you kind of made me nervous with that answer because you just mentioned podcasters having a pre-plan. So I also have a doc open on the right side of my screen doing the same thing. You kind of made me nervous with that.
No, I know. I'm sorry. But, there's some truth to it, but life isn't so black and white. Does that mean you should not prepare at all? No, I mean, I
Yeah.
think the truth probably falls somewhere in between. You should do some planning, have some questions that come to mind and to ask. And I think it's good to come in with some questions, but also be open to taking the conversation wherever. And towards the end, I started to find my zone with this, right? I always said at this point that, I'll have my notes, but the best podcast is where those notes just go out the window within
Yeah.
the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. The notes, the questions that you pre-plan, that's really just to help the plane get off the ground. At the very least, you can take it from onboarding to offboarding, from takeoff to landing, if you need to. But some conversations, you're not going to need them 10 minutes in. And those end up being great conversations. So
Absolutely.
whatever the podcast ends up being.
Absolutely. So, uh, for example, the reason I started a podcast, as you know, was to actually have conversations with people who know their stuff. So, in short, if I
And
describe
network.
it, it's called
Network.
networking. Yeah. So, if you were in my shoes, how would you do that?
How would I do what?
How would you actually create a podcast where you could actually talk to people you want to talk to? It's not necessary that they are super famous,
Mm-hmm.
but they are, they are industry leaders. They know their
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and they have been doing that. They've been there and done that. How would you do that?
Well, you start a podcast and you invite people on, because as I've already told you a few times via direct message, that people are going to be more willing to have a chat with you that way versus, hey, you want to get on a call for 15 minutes? Because then, look, people are selfish, right? They are. If they, why do I get going on a call with this kid? What's that going to do for me? I mean, whether they think that overtly or subconsciously doesn't matter. Most people do.
Yeah,
So when there's the perception that other people might be listening and they can tell their stories, they can share their stories, share their insights, that becomes a much more attractive option. So you're
yeah.
already doing it, as you know.
All right, all right. Okay. So let's just go from it. It's 2019. Growth Mindset University is huge, and your content on LinkedIn is also blowing up. And you were doing some web design stuff, and you started Trader Media, and it's 2022 now. You're working at Telos. So, what's the transition has been like for you, and what actually changed for you? So you went from doing a freelance business to more of a business. It's a proper SaaS business, right? And you just mentioned in the starting of the show that you just closed 51K revenue in the past 11 days. So just tell me something about the journey and what's the transition like.
Well, the transition has been happening since 2020. It's been a long, slow, and at times painful transition. I mean, you probably saw the beginning of it when I start talking about politics and just
Yeah.
very angry, right?
Uh-huh.
Very angry, very frustrated. Would wake up 7:45 a.m. and then think, what am I going to post? What political topic am I going to post about by 8 a.m.? Just really wasn't productive. No emphasis, no focus on any sort of revenue generating activities from 2020 till for a while, you know, and we get to 2021, and no surprise, business is not doing well. You lose a client here, you lose a client there, and you're not doing anything to bring in new clients. So what's going to happen? Your business is going to die. And that's kind of what started happening. Got to points where I only had $1,000 a month coming in. And then all of a sudden, I was still living with a roommate at the time, left over from college, because the situation was just great. So I'm bringing in $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, whatever it is at the time. And then he's like, "Oh, you have a girlfriend now. I signed up to live with one person, not two. And so you're out in 30 days. And I gotta find a place to rent that's going to be at least double the cost. or I gotta somehow buy a place, something. So I ended up buying a place, drained my bank accounts to make it happen, and investment portfolios to make it happen. Live cash poor for a while, and still really just struggling with business to pay the bills, all that sort of stuff. Like just not fun, man, not fun at all. And it's been a process, man. I gave up politics in very early 2021, probably February, March of 2021, when things got serious, and I needed to focus on business. And I was like, screw this stuff. It doesn't matter. It's so stupid. It's just this politics thing is just theater anyway. It's just like a theater with these narcissists on the stage. They're career narcissists, these politicians, most of them anyway. So it's just like, it's so stupid. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
So I remember it was late 2019 or late 2020 and early 2021. You were posting about political stuff every day, commenting on people's posts, having debates here and there. And I
Yeah.
used to watch that. I was like, yo, this guy is not what he's doing right now. But I was kind of afraid to come up with this topic
Oh yeah.
on the show. But you
Oh, please
mentioned it
do.
yourself. All right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you saw it wasn't productive. And it took me probably 6 months to realize. I probably started my political journey in late September of 2020. And then it was September 2020, not even late September. And then that went until February, March. So, give or take 6 months. And then I came to my senses like, oh, I don't belong in this theater. This is not what my life is supposed to be. And I didn't realize how dark and angry and frustrated it had gotten. So slowly but surely started picking up the pieces, tried to make the podcast production agency work, Trend Up Media. Realized I didn't believe in the offer, was burned out by it, just a really hard sell. And so I pivoted out of that, tried my hand in a lead generation business for literally 3 months,
Yeah.
had some sort of results. Like I booked 30 appointments for myself in under 30 days. So I was like, oh, I can do that. And I made a bunch of sales. So I was like, yeah, I could do this for other people. I generated my own leads to sell lead gen, of course. But then when you start doing it for other people, like it worked for one person. And then like the three others, it just completely flopped for. My life was pretty miserable doing that, managing hundreds of conversations day to day, people mad at you for reaching out. Like it was a very, very dark time. And I'm still struggling money wise, and it's just not fun. And then my now partner, David Riggs, and I decided to form a team and create Talos. He had introduced me to some ideas, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I think I want to do this I think I want to make a business into this, but first, I should ask you, do you want to do it with me? And he's like, oh yeah, that's actually why I introduced you to all this. I wanted to do this with you all along. I was like, awesome. So here I am, really, I've been admiring David for a number of years. We started out as friends. He gave me a TED talk. I got him a Forbes article. This is years ago. And I was always more successful than him. And then while I was in the throes of darkness, politics, he surpassed me to the point of, he was reaching at that point. When I first met him in Denver in person for the first time in November 2020. Yeah. He was just starting to do $100,000 a month in his web agency. And then from there, it's just been a bottle rocket. And now they're steadily doing $250,000 a month. So, I really admired him. I was like, I'm just in this dark place. Now I get to team up with a successful guy that I admire, that I'm friends with. And it's just been a really great journey that I knew from the beginning, because I was teaming up with him. I knew it was going to be a successful journey. And I had a co-founder for the first time to compensate for my weaknesses. So that's really helpful too.
Yeah, David Riggs is also really awesome. I remember I was 17 or 18 when I was doing my website stuff, and I reached out to David because he was also selling web design. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and we had a conversations a couple of times. I don't know if he still remembers or not. But anyways, so you just mentioned about pivoting, and I've heard your podcast as well, and you have mentioned, have you talked about pivoting a lot of times. So I think that I have one regret, that was when I was doing my web design stuff, that was never successful for me. Like, I can count on my fingers how many clients I had over the span of a year. And I think that I should have pivoted and
Mm.
focused more on creating actual skills and then selling. So tell about how pivoting helped you in your career, because you were doing web design, you stopped that, and then you were doing trade media offer, burned out, and then you reworked on that. So how do you know when you have to? How do you actually figure out when you are actually have to pivot?
Yeah. And just as a side note, I've been doing Talos for almost a year now, so we've got some form of stability here for the first time in a while after doing all these pivots. And what has been really valuable in the pivots is I just get closer and closer to what aligns with me, what I enjoy and makes money and just works. You just have to try different things. That's what I've been doing. That's what all these pivots are, like just making a slight twist or a 180 twist and just tweaking the dial, trying to get closer to where I belong. And that's what it's done. If I was stubborn and just tried to make one thing work, I never would have found what I truly enjoy doing, which would suck. Work doesn't have to suck. Really doesn't. You just got to be willing to pivot a few times, try different things, pivot a lot of times, maybe. That's what it's done for me.
All right. And you just mentioned about David Ricks being your co-founder and Jordan Ross as well. So I think that after you have someone along with you on the journey, it makes it so much easier. And I think that you start to actually enjoy it. So how does actually working with David and Jordan has helped you in your career and finding your people, finding your community, and finding your love of business? How did it actually go?
Yeah, I mean, I never had a co-founder. I mean, I failed too many times on my own to do that again. I know a lot of what my most some of what my weaknesses are. I don't know everything about. You can never know everything about yourself. I have blind spots. Everyone has blind spots, but I know a lot of the weaknesses I have, and I thought that it would just be a lot smarter to partner up with people that could compensate for that, do the things I don't want to do, own the things I don't want to own, um, and just compensate for what do the things I'm not good at, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's really it. That's all. It's just been valuable from a compensation of weaknesses perspective, really.
And how do you actually find these kind of people? Because, for example,
Mm,
uh, I've been doing it alone since I started. So
hmm
I'm looking for people who are like minded and who want to do what I want to do
Yeah,
and have them along in the journey. So for a
great
person like
question.
me, if you were in my shoes, how would you do that?
Great question. Well, I started where you're starting now. No, I
Yeah,
think I started my podcast. That's a really, I don't know, maybe at
you were
19.
19. You were 19.
Yeah. So started my podcast at 19, and through that started meeting a ton of people. I promote the heck out of the podcast. Through that, meet more people on LinkedIn, message people on LinkedIn, comment on people's LinkedIn posts, get on calls with them, get on more calls, meet more people. And there you go. You've now planted the seeds. You've now dug the well before you're thirsty. You've built the relationships before you actually ever need them. I've been friends with David for almost 4 years. I've been friends with Jordan for almost 4 years. I didn't plan on doing business with them, on building a business with them. I had no plans of that. It just, they were in my network. I had already planted the seeds many years ago. And those seeds take time to grow. So it's great that, again, you're ahead of schedule. It's great that you're starting this podcast at 19 and you're going to meet some people through it that, these relationships may take 5-10 years to come to fruition. And that's okay. That's the design. That's the plan.
Awesome. So now you are doing a business that you love. You're around people who you love. Now, what is your goal with working, like business wise or your personal goals? Why does Jordan actually wake up every morning? And what is that one thing that you wake up for and you're doing the work you do?
Yeah, it's to enjoy the day, to enjoy the work that I'm doing, do good work, and um, hang out with good people. It's really as simple as that. And not work hard, but not work too hard. Don't burn myself out. Um, just have a nice balanced life. Just try to have a nice 10 out of 10 day. That's why I wake up.
Yes. Do you have any long-term ambitions or maybe a 5 year or 10 year goals?
Um, I probably should. I was in David's office in his apartment last week, which he's moving out of. He just bought a house. Very, very good on him. It's going to be beautiful. But anyhow, I was in his office last week, his home office, and I remembered this from the first time I met him in his other apartment. He's got all these whiteboards in his office of intentions, goals written in the form of like, I will do this. I will have that. The business will do this. That's how he writes them. And I was reminded last week, I was like, shoot, you saw that last year and you still didn't do anything about it. He sees that shit every day. Every day. That's powerful. I should do something like that. So the answer to your question is like, no, I actually don't right now. I just have, it's very vague. I'm just trying to set myself up, whatever that means. But I need
All
to be
right.
a little
So
more intentional with it.
yeah, I actually expected the answer to this question would be freedom, which you didn't mention.
That's it. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I'm always designing my life around. Yeah.
Yeah. So were your goals from starting always oriented towards freedom, or how did the idea of freedom actually come
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah. I mean, that's always been the through line. If you were to peel back the layers of the onion, why did I want to work for myself at 18 years old? Why? Well, it was, I would say, because I don't want to work for anyone else. Okay, why do you not want to work for anyone else? And you
Yeah.
would peel back the layers and you'd get to the core, which is freedom. That's always been the goal. Freedom of location, freedom to do the work I want to do, when I want to do it, with whom I want to do it, where I want to do it, all the stuff, yeah, all the forms of freedom.
All right. And what do you think about financial freedom? Because I've listened to your couple of shows around it, having guests who were doing real estate and stocks and etc., and they were working for their financial freedom. What do you think about it? Is this
Yeah, I
something
mean,
you actually target to achieve?
yeah, well, financial freedom is very simple. You've got more money coming in than going out. And you either have more, the money that's coming in, you're earning either A, passively, or B, doing work that you absolutely love, or a combination of both.
Yeah.
So it's really not that hard. you know, find if your monthly expenses are $4,000 and you're earning $5,000 a month either passively or doing whatever the heck you want to do, doing work that you really enjoy doing, then that's, in my book, that's financial freedom. It doesn't have to be this massive number that's not really, honestly, probably not going to do much for you. This arbitrary number, like it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm 19 right now, and it's my personal goal that I want to be financially free by the age of 23, and that doesn't mean that I want to be millionaire at that time. But again, I just
Mm-hmm.
want to earn enough that so the passive income, as you said, would cover my expenses. Then maybe I can do what I actually wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there will be many, as this podcast is targeted for Gen Z and the young people out there, I'm sure that there will be many 18, 19 years old who want to get freedom. That could be freedom of location, time, or money. How would you actually go about and plan that? And how would the road to getting that freedom would look like? If you could give me a
Uh,
101 on that.
I can't give you a formula here. That's what you're looking for. No, I can't. I can't give you a formula. You just gotta try again. Don't let failure discourage you to the point where now you're over time these failures building up. They're now you're dragging your feet, shuffling your feet, head down, bowing and scraping and apologizing for the simplest of requests. Now, maintain your sense of destiny. Maintain your sense of destiny that you will be the success that you imagine yourself being. Don't ever lose that. That's it's vague, but that's what I would say. And what I would also say is, you say 23, which is pretty fair. But I would say be prepared for it to take longer. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying I think it will. I'm just saying be prepared in the case that it does. Because what I'll finish with here is, and there's a book called Good to Great, and Jim
Mhm.
Collins, the author, tells a story in there. I hope I don't butcher it. I think it's called the Stockdale Paradox. I think Admiral Stockdale, he was a prisoner of war in either Korean War, Vietnam War, something like that, for like 7 years, for a long time. And what he saw, this was one of his takeaways, that the prisoners who thought they'd be out by Christmas or out by spring, or we'll be out by summer, those are the ones that didn't make it, because they thought, I will have made it by this time. And when that time came and they didn't make it, they would die shortly after, because literally they were heartbroken. They lost the will. So be prepared for it to take longer, or else you risk losing the will.
Or else maybe make sure that you do it by the age of 23. All right, that's all from my side. That's all the questions I had for you. For those for people who may want to reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have a place nowadays. I really don't.
LinkedIn.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Jordan Paris on LinkedIn. I guess that'll
And I
work.
think that you're pretty active on Instagram as well these days.
I would say probably I've never said this, but maybe Twitter at Jordan T Paris. I think that would be a good place. I'm hanging out there a little bit more.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jordan, for coming on the show. There would have no better way to kick off this podcast. And thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Congrats, and it's always good to talk about yourself. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.